You know, it's a great car. I can't get my head around where your valuation was at. There is one thing here, being a detective, it looks like this car might have originally been Guards Red. Somebody took a major shortcut here when they put quarter panels on this, but this is some serious cannonball run stuff. Period escort radar detectors stacked here. Sometimes in the world of Porsches, the crazier, the better.
I'm Steve 4, and I brought a '69 Camaro ZL1.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Well, I saw it pull in, and I heard it, and I recognized the sound of a ZL1. So this is one of the original '69 ZL1 Camaros?
It's a clone car.
So it started as a Camaro, but it has a ZL1 motor
in it.
Okay, that makes more sense. Before I get going on the car and take a look to give you my sense of what it's worth, what do you think it's worth today?
This car, with the market the way it is now, maybe $240,000.
Okay, and what are you basing that value on?
Mostly the motor, but I think the car was well done.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a little time alone with the car, poke around it, crawl around it, see what it's all about.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm here with Steve's clone car. This makes the appraisal process easier. This is where condition's really gonna matter. Beautiful paint on it. It looks reasonably correct around the outside. The panel gaps are decent. They're not concourse. Steve is placing a great deal of the value of this car on the fact that it has a ZL1 engine, which he said is a real ZL1 engine. The trim tag won't tell us what engine it was originally delivered with, but it will tell us if it was a 6-cylinder or an 8-cylinder car. And this is originally an 8-cylinder Camaro. It is an X44 trim code car, but again, we're looking at a replica. So the fact it's an X44 car doesn't really mean a lot here, other than that would be a correct code for a real one. But even if it is an original ZL1 block, a ZL1 block would be worth more money, but not, a ton more money than a reproduction GM ZL1 block. With heads that still are stamped GM Performance parts on the front, if I was really trying to make an accurate replica of a car or a clone, I probably would have ground that off and sandblasted the front of the head to at least disguise the fact that it has a modern part number and a modern logo on it. So underneath, the body and paint is very nice. It's not perfect all the way through here in the rocker panel. You can see it's had a little metal work. You can see some plug welding here. Would never pass muster as a concourse car. All right, so in the trunk, nicely done, has the right decals in the right place, has a appropriate wheel and spare tire. Okay, so here's something we need to take a look at. This car's actually had quarter panels put onto it. The original quarter panels were cut right along this seam. They put a new quarter panel over it, and there's actually pop rivets holding it on instead of being welded. Somebody took a major shortcut here when they put quarter panels on this, so that's a big concern of mine. I hate to say it, but when I see shortcuts like that on a build like this, I wonder what else they decided to take shortcuts on. Like if they put floors in it, did they actually weld them in? So we'll take a look inside. I mean, it has a proper Hurst shifter, correct steering wheel, AM radio, and that's about it. No air conditioning, nothing fancy. General condition, I would say, it looks like a nice number 3. All right, so now that I've looked over Steve's ZL1 clone, I feel like we can bring him back in here, and maybe I'll stand back a little bit when I give him what I think it's worth. I've looked over your car, and like you said, it's a replica or a clone of ZL1 number 18, and oddly enough, I used to own ZL1 number 18. I'm the guy who sold it for $840,000, so I know these cars pretty well.
I would imagine.
The replica market is a fickle one, and prices are all over the map. So your car has really nice paint, nice fit and finish, right stuff under the hood. I did find one thing on the car though that I want to show you that I don't know if you knew about, but it's in the trunk. And don't worry, it's not Jimmy Hoffa, but it's not far off. So let's take a look here. When they restored the car, if you put your hand in here and you feel, there's a seam where they cut the old quarter panels off right about here. It's unfortunate because the execution of the rest of the car is so nice. So, you know, it's a great car. I can't get my head around where your valuation was at in the $200,000 range. Honestly, I think the way it sits, you know, depending on the venue and where you sell it, it could sell for $75,000, maybe up to $100,000 depending on the buyer. But I don't think it's in the $200,000 range. I hope I haven't offended you too greatly, but
No.
you subjected yourself to torture, and I really feel bad that I'm the guy that had to bring some to you today, but thanks so much for bringing it. Really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Pretty dead on, to be honest with you. I think he's very knowledgeable and he knows his cars. You know, what do you do? Can't fight that.
My name is Anthony Rotheray, and the car's a 1977 Porsche 930 Turbo.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
Pretty good, Colin. How about yourself?
All right, what have you brought us? This thing sounds like a pretty healthy 911 Turbo or 930.
Yes, it is.
How long have you had this one for?
About 20 years.
You brought it in to let me appraise your car and tell you what I think it's worth. But before I do that, I'm curious what you, the Porsche guy, what you think it's worth, what your gut feeling is on market value.
That's a hard one. You picked me to bring a car that I never thought I'd ever want to sell, so it's hard to figure out what I would think it was worth.
Well, if you remove the emotion from it.
So I would say probably 100, 100 and a quarter maybe.
Okay. All right, well, head on through the fancy door and come and get you in a little bit.
Okay, no.
Thank you.
Yeah, no burnouts.
So now I'm alone in a room with Tony's 930 Turbo. A number of things have been modified when it was living in California and it was new. It has a reported Andial-built hot-rodded 930 engine. It has different brakes and different wheels, and the color has been changed to a color not available in 1977, but it is a factory Porsche color. All of these things typically would be the kiss of death for value. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk around this car and see if they really are in this example, because sometimes, especially in the world of Porsches, the crazier, the better. Really nice panel gaps. Everything seems to line up nicely. You know, little things, the tires are mismatched front and rear, but that's an easy fix. I noticed when it was coming through the door, there's a little paint shrinkage in this area, which leads me to believe, you know, the car was painted a long time ago. Porsches, especially 930s, are fast. And in these years, 1977, I know this car has upgraded brakes. They're still not the best brakes in the world, especially when you put a huge, high boost, hot-rodded engine in the back. And take a look at the chassis to see if it's had any damage. So you can look at the inner frame rails here, the inner structure, see if everything's nice and straight. And then behind the fuel tank here, you can also find the chassis number stamped in this panel. There's a bunch of speaker wires here and stuff, but right here we have a chassis number. So this looks nice and clean. The font looks good. It does not look like it was cut out and welded in or restamped. All the way back in here is nice and purple. Now, there is one thing here, being a detective. It looks like this car might have originally been Guards red. I would say this was a red car that's been painted purple. You know, red's not a bad color either if you had to go back to stock. Now this obviously is, Tony was talking about how it's an Andial-built engine. The biggest effect to the value is that it has these parts and it has these modifications. And for a car that hasn't been detailed in 20 some years, it's very nice. It's orderly. I see some nice indicators written, date codes written on parts, like when the brake fluid was changed, when the oil was changed. It shows a good pride of ownership. It's a real Porsche whale tail. Rubber is a real Porsche piece. There's a little dent on the floor pan up here in the front. Probably mechanic grabbed it at the wrong spot. No big deal. Very clean, very dry. Looks like a California car, like Tony said it was. It's got a 930 part number on it. Those look like upgraded brakes from a later model car. So on the inside, I see this cool period Fittipaldi wheel here. Nice aftermarket edition. This period alarm was a Ungo box, if I remember correctly. So that's kind of neat. So down here in the console is one of my favorite things about this car. There are dual period escort radar detectors stacked here. And I don't know if one's aimed out the front and one's aimed out the back, But this is some serious cannonball run stuff right here. I mean, we've got a speedometer rotated so you don't really even see it until the thing's at 90 miles an hour. We've got a tach that's pointed at 6,900 RPM at 12 o'clock. This was clearly a car that somebody was planning to go very fast in. Judging by the fact that Tony has installed a third radar detector on the windshield, I think the car is still continuing its tradition of being driven in anger. I believe after looking it over, I've got a pretty good feel for this car. I'm gonna noodle this around for a little bit, maybe call a couple of Porsche buddies, and then we'll go get Tony. Hey, Tony, come on in. It's a very cool car. And I think 10, 15 years ago, a car like this with modifications would kind of be like, you know, the scarlet letter in the Porsche world, but I think the tides have turned. I think now people like hot rods again. They like cool stuff. They like personalized Porsches. You know, I think your car's day is here and still yet to come. You thought maybe around 125. I think it's worth a little more than that today. I think if you put this car in the right venue, the car is probably worth more in the neighborhood of $150,000 today. And like you said, with the acquisition of Andial by Porsche, you know, that brand recognition, when that starts coming into play, I think it could get potentially better as well. I mean, I know you're not selling it. I know you love the car, but, you know, gun to your head, you had to sell it today. I think it's worth a little bit more than you thought even it was worth. So
I'm glad you agree with me. I thought that also.
Well, you're probably glad I disagreed with you, because if I agreed with you, it'd be worth less.
That's true. Going that semantic way, yeah.
So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Take care.
I'll enjoy the drive back.
I bet you will.
I have at least 8 or 9 other ones I'd sell before this. This is a very high at the list. I've had it for like probably close to 20 years, and I just never get sick of it. It's an amazing driving car.